Good afternoon. It is afternoon where I am on this date. So I wanted to just kind of welcome you to a presentation that usually I do during summer preview. And since we are not in person this year, I just wanted to make sure that you still, as a family, got this information. My name is Desiree Nouns, and I am the Senior Director of the Office of Community Standards and Wellbeing. And I hope that you are seeing my screen share. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to kind of see and really kind of engage in a way that we talk about our expectations for our students. And I hope that you're watching this with your student. So I do this again during summer preview in the summer with parents and students. It's usually in the morning and we get through it pretty quickly. So I'm just going to kind of start to begin the presentation. So I work in the Office of Community Standards and Wellbeing, and we are a part of the Division of Student Life. And the Division of Student Life has about 10 different departments in it, and we are a department under that division. Vice Provost of Student Life, Tanya Weingard, is over all of us. And really how I want to talk to you about our community is really just our expectations. And it kind of starts with these 5 pillars. When we talk about being a part of this community, we really want you to be able to do all of these things in conjunction with one another. They exist individually, but we want them to be kind of cohesive in your experience here at Creighton. So these 5 pillars that I've talked about the last couple of years are really important to who we are as an institution, but also really trying to help students understand their development and their growth as a student and as a scholar, as somebody who's going to meet new people, and all of the different experiences that you'll have in college. So we're going to start with the first one being integrity. So as you can read, this is a really important principle that we talk about. It's one of the things that I think really defines what and my office does and kind of who we are as a staff. So we really challenge students to think about the principle of having integrity and kind of how that shapes your life, and both inside and outside the classroom. There's going to be a lot of things that happen to you now that you're in college. And so those, we're really trying to help students understand that this is a really positive value to have integrity, to lead with integrity, to show your friends and your peers that you have integrity, and what your responsibilities are as a student. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about what's inconsistent with this value. So this is one of the ones that I talk about the most, is conduct unbecoming of a Creighton student. And this includes anything that I would see as being contrary to who we are as an institution, as a member of this community. Like I said, you have responsibilities, and the rights and responsibilities of your student is one of these, is knowing exactly what we expect of you. So conduct unbecoming, I'm a part of this community, both as a staff member and actually as a current student. I'm in a graduate school program, and then I'm also an alumni. So I'm a part of this community just as much as you are. And so your behavior reflects on me as mine does on you. So it's really important for us to kind of understand that about one another. This includes off-campus behavior. So anything that happens off campus, I tell students that we have the ability to talk to you about. So even if you're in Timbuktu, I can have a conversation with you. If you by chance make a bad decision or a poor choice, I can pull you in and have a conversation with you about that incident. Failure to comply is when a university official has asked somebody to do something and they're not doing it. So that's something that's inconsistent. Having a fake ID. These are pretty prevalent in college. I know that I have a collection of IDs that have been confiscated over the years. And this is something that if you have one, please don't bring it. Don't plan on buying one. This is something that I think happens a lot in college, but we really want you to make the best choices for you. We don't want you to get a citation. We don't want you to have a conversation about it. Fleeing Student had to put this in about 6 years ago when students were just leaving the scene or running away, and public safety would have to chase after them. So this is something that would be inconsistent with our community values of integrity. The next one is dignity. I think this is the one that for me stands above all the other ones. This is a part of our Jesuit Catholic background, respecting everybody and where they come from, their different experiences, but also promoting who they are and that lived experience. I don't want to tolerate you. I want to cherish. I want to celebrate who you are and where you come from. And we believe that everybody has that right. We want your experience to be positive. We want it to be full of fun and full of engagement and also full of learning. And if somebody impacts that for you, I'm going to have a conversation with them. On the flip side of that, if you impact that for somebody else, I'm going to have a conversation. So we really want you to respect everybody's experience and make sure that you are leading your life just as much as you want them to lead theirs as well. So inconsistent with this value would also be harassment or bullying. This is something that we take very seriously. We don't think, like I said, I shouldn't impact your experience as a student and you shouldn't impact mine. Hazing, when you deliberately or intentionally hazing somebody, that's inconsistent with this value. Alcohol and drugs, this is not only your treatment of others, this is the treatment of yourself. So if you are using alcohol and drugs and that is impacting your life, that would be dignity to yourself. And then harm to others. Obviously, harassment and bullying come into that, but there's also the physical and emotional harm. This includes off-campus things that might happen. Title IX is a part of this, and there is an overarching policy that is faculty, staff, and student related, and it has to do with sexual and relationship misconduct and also discrimination. So those categories are gender, race and ethnicity, religion, orientation. So those are those policy, that's the policy that those would fit under. The third one is community, and this is something that I think Creighton does so well. You will hear this word probably about 1 million times during your time here at Creighton. And this is just really, I think, a staple of what we do well. Community is really our lovely environment that we want you to be a part of. You chose us and we chose you, and this is going to be such a great part of your life and a chapter of your life where you'll learn so much about each other, about yourself, and your development. But you also have to understand that everybody that is a part of the Creighton community has just as much worth to be here as well. And so we want you to treat each other with kindness. We want you to understand that we're part of the bigger Omaha community and a bigger part of the state of Nebraska, and then also a bigger part of our nation and our global sense. So that's really important. But right here on our campus, as well as in Omaha, it's really important for you to understand that you are a responsible part of this community, and we want you to keep it that way. Inconsistent with this value is unlawful use or possession of alcohol or drugs. This is probably the one that we talk to students about the most. I want to mention that if you do possess these things, we will have a conversation. One of the things that we really try to impart on people is if you have marijuana, if you're coming from a state that has marijuana that's legal or recreational, we ask that you keep it there. Just, keep it with your parents, not for them to use, but for, we just don't want it on our campus. And with that, any possession of THC, wax, or oil is actually a felony in the state of Nebraska and in Omaha. So we want you to be aware of that. We have you sign a paper and are willing to acknowledge that we explain that to you. Along with that goes any other violations of the law. So assault, anything that might come to the attention of the university. If we get called by Omaha Police Department, or if you are arrested and we find out about it, that would be something that we would have a conversation. Theft is one of those violations. And then procurement of alcohol and drugs. So if you're giving alcohol or drugs to somebody else, that would be something that my office would also talk to you about. The last one, or the second to last one, is development. So this is really important for us to have students understand that supporting not only the development of themselves and really kind of engaging in their own life is really important, but really understanding that other people's development is important as well. So going back to that second one of respecting and promoting the dignity of all persons, this one is really in line with that as well. So understanding that your behavior impacts others. So I don't want to get in the way of somebody else's development, anybody else's development in a moral or spiritual way, but we also want you to engage with students in a really positive way of their development of themselves and others. So that is a really great part of who we are. Inconsistent with these values is allowing violations to occur. So if you know somebody is doing something, we want you to make sure that you're letting somebody know, or you just take yourself out of that situation. That happens from time to time, and we want students to understand that if you know something is happening, I don't want you to be a part of it. Take yourself out of it. Presence of alcohol or drugs, so being in the presence, whether you're drinking or using, that is a violation. Vandalism. So on the floors, we've had vandalism in the residence halls. That's something that we would discuss if we found out who it was. Noise, same thing. Those environments are really important. So we want to make sure that you're not making noise. After hours, quiet hours, off-campus events, athletic events, anything that you go to off campus is something that if we find out about or something happens, we're going to have a conversation with you. That includes student organization, events that happen off campus, which includes our fraternity and sorority life and all of our other student organizations, and then anything that happens in the Omaha community. We have a really close working relationship with Omaha Police Department and Omaha Fire Department, and there are times when we get reports of community members that say, hey, this student, this house where a bunch of students live at, they had a big party. We want you to address it. So we really want students to understand their responsibility as a civic member of the community of Omaha, but also a Creighton member. So that is one of those things that we would have a conversation about. So the last pillar that I want to talk about is really kind of thinking about holistically who you are as a person. And this is something that I think we have really started to understand, that we are multidimensional people. I'm not just a student, I'm not just a staff member, but I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm all these different things. And so as a student, as somebody who's coming here, you are all those different things as well. And you will be really complex, and you'll start to really kind of break down all the things that make you you. And you have that time in college to kind of figure yourself out. So these are the 3 of the 8 that I think really are impactful in what I do with students and what I talk to them about. And so I'm going to talk about just 3 of the 8 dimensions. And the first one, I think, is huge part of college and what you will be engaged with on the outside of the classroom, learning about yourself and about others, is those relationships and the networking and the people that you're going to meet during these 4, 6, 8 years that you're with us. And that includes professional school. That includes all the things that you want to do. So what do you want to do with your life? Thinking about that overarching big picture, not just what you're doing right now, but if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be a PN, if you want to be all those things that you set out yourself in life to be, you really do have to start thinking about them now. And those things that you choose to do with your life now at 18, 19 are going to have an impact on you in the next 10 years. So really thinking about that big picture right away. It's kind of hard to do that when you're younger and when you're just coming into that next chapter of your life, but it is important. It is something that I like students to critically think about. Who do you want to be? Are you doing things that really are putting yourself out there as being a positive role model, a positive member of this university? So you really have to think about what you put out on social media, but then also the choices that you're making associated with your social part of your life. The next one is emotional well-being. And I think this is probably the dimension that I think is the most important for students and everybody to think about, is that emotional well-being of who you are as an individual really kind of dictates everything that you do. So if you look at all these little squiggles, and I hope that you can see them clearly, when we're talking about understanding how a positive relationship fits into your life or playing on your strengths. So what are really some of your personality strengths that really get you places? Thinking about your happiness and your joy. What is your autonomy from your parents? What is your autonomy from your friends? The self-realization, so being cognizant of all these things and how they intermix. So all these little squiggles, and there's more, these are just the ones that fit on the screen right now, are really kind of those things that we have to be cognizant of, because if one of those kind of hits the skids, we see that and how that kind of affects the other parts of our life. So it's kind of that balance almost, and your emotional well-being is very important to all of those other aspects of your life. If you're not feeling well emotionally, you see a hit in your, your intellectual well-being or your social well-being. All those things kind of start to snowball. So meaning and purpose of life is a really big question, but that's something that we develop over those years. And I think this all goes back to resiliency. Life is hard, and it's not always going to be sunny and joyous. But I really think that students who are learned to really kind of compartmentalize the stressors in their life and to really understand what are the joys that really bring me, that I am going to go out and seek, instead of kind of having maybe that lower time where I'm just going to kind of, keep under the radar. All those resilient moments really make us who we are. And I think resiliency is something that we all learn, and we all learn to kind of go with the flow of life. And so how do we really try to understand that about ourselves? And everybody's different in how they deal with it. So I think that is something that I want students to focus on. I want you to focus on as a new student. That transition to college is really tough. And so we want to make sure that you're cognizant of that. And you'll hear about this a lot. I think, again, emotional well-being is a huge part of that. So the third one I want to talk about, and I'm almost done, I promise. This one I think is something that people don't necessarily think a lot about. So what environment do I really thrive in? What environment is perfect for who I am as an individual? There are a lot of different traits that we have, whether you're more extroverted, whether you're more introverted, whether you like to be around people, whether you just need some quiet alone time. So what environment is perfect for you? Being quiet and restful, making sure that your roommate knows that about you, or you're loud and fun. You like to go, you're the center of attention. You like to go out and meet people. And then how does that impact you? So really this is about getting along with other people, but this is really, I think, about voicing what is really kind of the best part of what environment really try to be in, and you understand about yourself as being perfect for your personality. And how do you impact others? How does your loud and fun and boisterous and outgoing personality affect your roommate or your friends who maybe are a little bit more quiet and they want to be a little introspective instead of always being out and fun? So that's something that I think students and you as a new student, maybe you've never lived with somebody before, that's something I think is a part of being an adult and trying to get along with somebody, but also trying to see where they're coming from as well. And that also extends to, you're with us for 2 years on campus. What does that look like when you move off campus? So those roommate agreements that we have you do your first year and your second year, I think need to extend into that off-campus living when you're juniors and seniors. Making sure that if you live with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people, understanding where they're coming from, and those off-campus engagements and with the Omaha community are really important. And so helping us understand where you're coming from and helping your roommates understand where you're coming from really is important. So through this whole thing, I've talked a little bit about choices and outcomes and kind of decision making. What choices are you going to make for your life in all of these different ways, all these different values that I talked about, and those well-being things that I talked about? We want you to make positive choices for yourself. We want you to understand that there's a lot of things that come at you in college and really just being an adult and kind of maybe being on your own for the first time. And what are those obstacles that are going to happen? And there's going to be some. You can't go through life without any obstacles or any, maybe down times. Those are the times when you need to understand that there are resources for you, that we as a division of student life are a resource. There's so many different professionals that I work with that are fantastic, that will help you. We want you to be successful here. And a part of that is really, again, looking at that big picture and what are the good positive choices that you can make for yourself. And then understanding that you have people that you can reach out to. So whether it's your RA or your RD or somebody in the Student Leadership and Involvement Center or somebody in the CIC, the Creighton Intercultural Center, or even me as a person that you're maybe meeting over this presentation, knowing that there are resources out there for you. And then again, going back to that holistic development, we want you to thrive in every part of your life. And sometimes those parts aren't in sync with one another. So how do we help you grow? How do we help you seek out the things that bring you joy? And then, understanding that you have a personal responsibility for all of this. No one can make you do it. No one can get you to go to that next thing or, that next student organization or that next event, but you have a responsibility to engage with your life and with your life inside and outside the classroom. We can help with that too, but I think that's one of the things about learning about yourself and understanding what you need and where you're coming from. So this next slide is really, I always in person tell students when they're in the same room as, students, this doesn't concern you, but it really does. It concerns everybody. But this slide is more information for parents and just kind of talking about communication and how we communicate as a division of student life, as a university, and what that means for you as a parent and kind of how your role has changed. Not living with your son or daughter, or maybe they're still at home and you're here in the Omaha community, what that communication is like. And then also understanding that there are a lot of things that happen. I think one of the hardest roles that I have had to do in my life is I have 4 kids. I have a daughter that's going to be a junior in college. And so a couple of years ago, I was in the same boat as you, just trying to figure out what I needed to do to help her be successful, but then also understand that my role changed. I wasn't her manager anymore. I wasn't somebody that got to know if she went to class. I wasn't going to know that until the end of the semester if her grades came back and they weren't maybe what I expected. So understanding that I am not a manager of her time anymore. I don't get her to school. I don't get her to practice. I don't get her to wherever she needs to go. So really sliding into that support role. And that's probably one of the hardest things that I've had to do as a parent. I know it's not easy, but understanding that supporting them and let them grow and let them stand on their own 2 feet is really going to make them a successful adult. So I talk about when to contact us. And a couple of years ago, I talked to parents about green light, yellow light, and red light issues. So green light issues are, hey, my roommate ate my ramen. Going up to yellow light, those green light issues that they can kind of deal with on their own. Trying to really help them understand that communication is key to really help them maybe make those decisions for themselves and not be indecisive or not be really reliant on us as parents to make decisions for them. So those green light issues that they can kind of handle on their own. Yellow light issues are, gosh, you know what? I know that this is tough. I know that this is hard. Here are some advice. This is some advice of how I would handle it, but still letting them maybe kind of fail and try it. And then those red light issues are really when it is important for us to reach out. So I give the example all the time of when, maybe that your roommate or your son or daughter, your student's roommate is going to injure themselves. That's definitely a red light issue. That's something that we need to know about immediately. So any harm or any safety issues, please call us. And then if you have a question, always reach out. I have some parents say, I don't want my son or daughter or my student to know I'm calling, and that's fine too. We can always kind of chat about things that are going on. The last thing I wanted to touch on before I'm done is just FERPA. And what FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. And so that is a law that has been in place for decades, but how it relates to your relationship with your student is important. So there's 3 buckets of FERPA that we kind of manage here in higher education and at Creighton. One of them is financial. So anything having to do with loans or scholarships or money that you know, you need to pay for tuition, that's a bucket. Academics, so grades, anything that they're doing inside the classroom, that's a bucket. And then behavioral, that's a bucket for outside of the classroom things. And that's kind of where I fall into. You need to have a conversation with your student, and students, if you're listening, please have this conversation with your parents. A lot of parents are like, oh, well, I have access to that because I pay the bills. And that's just not true. The students' rights under this law are their own. So even if they're 17, 18, 19, they need to give you permission to access any of those buckets. So if you feel like you need to have a conversation with me about something that may have happened, I'm going to check that FERPA record and see if you have permission to talk, if I have permission to talk with you about that student incident or that student conversation that I've had. So those are the things I really like students and parents to talk about. You'll hear about FERPA a couple of times, maybe in other people's presentations, but I definitely like to address it because that's something that I always run into. If there's not a FERPA release, I'm not going to be able to share all the information with you. I can talk about process, but I can't talk about specifics. So that's really the end of my presentation. I miss being in person because this is the time where I get to meet a lot of you and really kind of have those good one-on-one conversations. But if you do want to reach out to me, please do. communitystandards@creighton.edu is our email that you can reach out to me at, and that goes straight to me. Or you can call if that's more, you know, your style and you just want to have, you know, a friendly conversation over the phone. Is that number right there for 280-2775. And again, Desiree Nouns, I'm the Senior Director of the Office of Community Standards and Wellbeing, and thank you for your time.